Kia ora, welcome back everybody. Here again with another reaction to the ongoing interview that Christian Craighead has with Mr. Shawn Ryan. So let's jump back in.
At what point do you figure out if you're going SAS or SBS? What do you think they're looking for when it comes to recruiting SAS guys? When it comes to the selection, are you recruited for SBS, SAS? When did you
Good questions. Or the build-up, I guess, or the pre-roll, warm-up, intro stuff.
find out about the Special Air Service?
I knew I found out quite young when I was quite young.
Okay.
So as they still are today, they're within newspapers a lot. The Iranian embassy siege happened in 1980. I can't remember that. I would have been 4 years old, but
I remember that footage being used. I don't remember the incident happening, but I remember that footage being used during my cycle when we started the CQB black roll or counterterrorism training aspect of the cycle. And I remember sitting in the room with the guys that I was on cycle with and the instructors who had it on, and just, man, I lapped it all up. Just loved everything I saw about it. I loved, the footage that was there, and when they were going through and this was being shown to us, just the feeling of, if anything like this happens, this is what we're preparing for, this is what we're training for. And I was just amazed at what the British SAS did, accomplished and achieved, and the people that they saved, and the terrorist threats that they neutralized and took out that day. It was, for me, I thought it was awesome. I still do. Anyway.
people say they remember it. I don't remember it. But I'd always heard them being mentioned, and it's still to this day is what people say. It's the magic dust of the country. Oh, they should just send the SAS in to go and get them, or to kill them, or to do this, or to. So that's what the working man is like saying, oh, just send the SAS in, so they'll sort them out. So and then the movie, as mentioned before, Who Dares Wins. I saw that when I was, I think it would have been 11 or 12 years old. Which is still, you could argue, too young to see that movie, but I saw it, and in my mind, that's why I was like, I need to be in the SAS. When I joined the army, and when I was in training, and when I never mentioned about joining the SAS. I never openly said it to people.
I think that's a good move. I held my cards very close to my chest as well during my preparation, and I think, the more people within my platoon and within my company, I guess the more they saw me training and the type of training that I was doing, they probably put two and two together. I must be training for selection or whatever. And then over time, slowly, as the date got closer, obviously I needed to let my leaders know, and then friends of mine or other people within the company started to ask, but there wasn't too many. Like, there wasn't a massive amount of people going, oh, are you going on selection? There was nothing like that, not for me anyway. I think it was just people might have heard, and then they're like, oh, you're training for selection, and it was just in passing, and I was like, yeah, and that was about it. And then occasionally there'd be some more in-depth conversations, either at the mess or other places outside of work hours, where people might ask a little bit more. But yeah, I like what Craig is sharing. I think that's pretty common for most people. Well, I think for most people that make it anyway, I think most people that do make it, that pass selection, in my opinion and in my experience, speaking with those that have passed, all of us seem to have just kept it to ourselves for as long as we could, right up until, the last minute, till people had to know.
Well, I want to do one thing at a time. I wanted to get in the parachute regiment first. Let's get in the parachute regiment first. And then, but in my heart, even when I went into the army recruiting office, and I wanted to, in my mind, I wanted to be in the SAS.
Actually, when he mentions that, there was I remember this with the recruit sergeant that I'd let know at the time at the Army Depot in Gisborne, where I grew up. And the recruit sergeant asked me, what do you want to do in the Army? And because I was, so young and dumb, naive, I said, I want to join the SAS. And just not thinking anything of it. And it was when I got laughed at at that point. I suppose that it was a sergeant in the Army. He's probably heard and seen lots of people mention stuff like that before. He clearly knows how difficult and how hard it is. Maybe he had tried selection before, I don't know. But I remember him laughing, and that for me was the trigger to keep this to myself. I'm not letting anybody else know what my intentions are, because I didn't want to be laughed at anymore. But at the same time, without him realising it, that recruit sergeant stoked the fire within me to link in. Even if I never saw him again, I would know that I made it, that I passed, and that I got through.
What is the... Can you explain a little bit of the difference between SAS and SBS?
There's kind of no real difference.
Really?
They do the same. Well, there's no real difference. One is the
It's the same, from what I've heard.
There's lots of different people will say, oh, what's he saying that for? The selection process is identical. So we do a joint selection.
Okay, so you're mixed in.
Yeah, so you do a joint selection and that.
I never knew if that was confirmed or not until just now. I'd always heard that the selection for 22 and SBS was the same. They do the same selection. And then at least what I had heard, so he's confirmed that is the case now for me, which is cool. And then what I've heard, then they split off at some point. I don't know if that's during the cycle or, I guess because their selection is 6 months, maybe it's at the end of their selection where they split off, and then the SBS operators go focus more on the maritime type stuff, while still having that SAS capability, because they are SF, and then the SAS carry on and do what they do. But this is good for me anyway to hear the difference between the two and what happens, and knowing that the selection is actually the same.
And they're on paper they are the maritime tier 1 special forces element.
Okay, so there's not one up here and one. They're equivalent.
They're supposed to be the same. So.
Right.
I picked up on the smile there, and Shawn Ryan reading between the lines as well. I think, like with anything, there's always going to be competition. When Shawn's going, so there's not one up here and one down here. And Craig says, they're supposed to be the same. I think there's always going to be that banter. There's always going to be the who's better, SBS, SAS, or vice versa. And that's just part of the camaraderie that comes with that, and also the competitive nature of the Special Forces world and the jobs that they do.
Roger that. Roger that. When it comes to the selection, are you recruited for SBS, SAS?
You volunteer to do
volunteer.
Yeah.
Do you volunteer for what are they? Do they both fall under an umbrella?
You can, if you're in the Army, apply to join the SBS, and if you're in the Navy or the Royal Marines, you can apply to join the SAS. Or RAF as well.
So this is basically Delta SEAL Team 6 equivalents.
Yeah,
if correct. Mm-hmm. SBS would be more the Team 6. Delta would be more the SAS.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
And you volunteer, so you put a request in through your unit. That goes to the recruitment. So
that's a cool way, interesting way of looking at it, the way Shawn Ryan put it. So SBS would be the equivalent of SEAL Team 6, and then Delta would be the equivalent of the SAS. So, cool. That makes it clearer and easier, I think, for anybody, including me, to understand or try to put a framework or structure around it, SBS, SAS, Delta, SEAL Team 6, like how do they connect? I like what he's done there. It's cool.
So, and then you have to do some pre-courses to get on selection, and then you go on selection, and it's a 6-month process and then continuation training after you're badged into your unit. But the continuation training is then separated. So the guys who pass SAS selection do their continuation training in Hereford, and the SBS in Poole, and like that's where they'll do their dive training and things.
Okay.
So,
Do you guys do dive training?
no,
All air stuff?
it's just a mix.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. What do you think they're looking for when it comes to recruiting SAS guys?
I think
I always find that question interesting, even when I get asked it still today. What are they looking for? How do you know if somebody has it? Like and when they say has it, how do you know if somebody has what it takes to serve as an operator within the SAS? And that's a tricky question. So anyway, rather than me rambling on about my take on it, I'll listen to Craig first, and I might chime in a little bit later on. But it's an interesting question.
blunt about it is they want people who are physically capable, whatever that means. So robust and fit, like really fit and really robust people. But more importantly, as selection continues, is you need to be able to assimilate information. And time is always precious. In theory, selection should be much longer, but we're sort of cramming a lot of stuff in and trying to test and evaluate. So we want people who can pick up, assimilate information quickly, get told something, put it into practice, and then do the next skill set. So and being able to work with other people is another key requirement. So that's kind of what they're looking for.
Is there a certain type of...
I love how he broke that down. Pretty simple. Physically able to take in a lot of information in a short period of time and able to apply it. That's sort of the three things that I took away out of what he explained about there in terms of Shawn Ryan's question. What are they looking for? What does he think they're looking for? Yeah. It's a good summary, I think.
disposition, attitude, demeanor that they're looking for?
Not what they're looking for. I think people just fall into that category.
Okay. What is it like, dude, type of disposition, attitude, demeanor that they're looking for?
Not what they're looking for. I think people just fall into that category.
Okay. What is it like?
That's interesting. Yeah, I would, my take and my thoughts, having seen and spoken with senior instructors, being on the other side of a selection course and observing some of those debriefings and the communications and what happens in there when they're looking at candidates, there seemed to be, and maybe it's more of the psychs evaluating that piece, but at least in my observations, there seemed to be some time and emphasis or some time and focus discussing a person's attitude and demeanor and how they communicate, because you don't want to be that guy that's arrogant, cocky. You would have seen it on my reaction to the Australian SAS selection. I forget which one it was. They were blinking way too long. I should have chunked them up into smaller pieces like what I've done here. But there was a guy there, one of the candidates, I'm pretty sure from memory, he was candidate 130. And he was on the back foot when he went into his first little panel in the early days of the selection. He ended up being removed, but his communication style seemed to rub people up the wrong way from what I could hear. And that seems to be something that, again, at least in my experience, instructors and badged operators are looking at, because you're trying to pick up on how somebody communicates, what their traits are, characteristics. Will they fit in with the team? How will they fit in and gel with the team? Interesting that Craig doesn't, is saying that's not what they're looking for.
Do they have interviews before you go to the selection?
They didn't when I was.
You just throw your name in the hat, get approved, and you're in.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you do the course here.
Interesting. What would you say the culture is like? What is it like when you show up for selection?
Sorry for pausing. It was just another great comment that he mentioned. It's cool to see how genuinely curious Shawn is, to get an understanding of what that process is. You just apply, get approved, and then you're in. Like Craig mentioned, you apply and then you've got to do the course. You've gotten a foot onto the course, and now you've got to earn your stripes to be able to stay there, basically. But yeah, the interviews before, same again. When I applied, there was no interview. I did have a conversation with my OC and sergeants, and at different times, and my platoon commander. They had questions for me, I think probably just wanting to make sure, am I serious about this? Because I was so young and very fresh and new to battalion, hadn't been there long. And those that have seen some of the other videos, I wasn't the greatest at navigation. So, yeah, there is no interview. Maybe that's part of the process in America. One thing that I also learned from Bill Bestick when I interviewed him was that in NZ, at least anyway, during my time, and I don't know if it's still the same now, but you couldn't have your application rejected. If you apply and you want to go and do it, my leaders couldn't reject it. So I didn't know that. So I was glad to hear that after, but that they probably, and they may have wanted to decline it. And I think, I think that's a great thing that they can't. And I hope that that's still the case, that they can't decline your application to go on the selection if that's what you want to do. So hopefully that's still the case. And I'm glad I found that out, albeit years later.
Are they welcoming? Do they treat you like shit?
No, it's very quiet. It's just people. Again, we're on the borders of what I'm going to talk about and not talk about. But when you turn up selection, it's similar to joining the army again. Everyone's measuring everyone up. From the instructor point of view, they're not saying anything. They're not imposing anything. They don't need to.
Strictly evaluation.
It's just they're not screaming, shouting, doing whatever. They're part of they don't, like I say, the selection process. People know what they're getting into, but it's more of the, when 200 people or so, just short of 200 people turn up on day one, and you're looking around going, statistically about 6 to 12 people are going to graduate out of this.
So you get about a 5% chance of making.
And sometimes it's bigger courses, sometimes it's smaller, but pass. But you're looking around and you're thinking, who's going to pass? Am I going to be one of these? Is there someone else? You're weighing it up and just getting the measure of people, I suppose.
That's, hearing him speak about that, for me, at least anyway, in NZ and Australia, that was exciting. That was one of the exciting aspects about it, the uncertainty, the unknown, the looking around and seeing some units fit, or who appear to be fit, strong, capable, and wondering, can I hack it? Will I still be here at the end?
And then it starts.
That's roughly a 5% success rate.
I believe so. That's what it should be.
How many people came out with you?
Well, we had a quite a big course, so it must have been easy. So it's I think 18.
18 came out.
Yeah.
That's always, you get those comments too. I like that he shared that. Must have been an easy course why there was so many, because I'd heard the stories in NZ. I didn't hear so much about Australia, but I'd heard some of the stories in NZ where guys are going on a course of 30 to 40 and 2 or 3 would pass out of that 30 or 40 people. Sometimes more in terms of the candidates that started. So pretty crazy in terms of the numbers. In Australia, obviously a much larger pool. You would have seen on the reaction that I did 130 odd candidates, and I can't remember how many finished up on theirs. But there seemed to be a decent number. On my one, all up, including the barrier testing, there was probably a little under 300 by the time. Oh, somebody's calling. I'll have to call them back later. By the time we finished, there was probably about 27 to 19 of us. There was 27 of us that finished. So some might say that's a pretty big number, and that is big for selection success completion. And then from that, they took 19 of us. That's the two numbers that I have from memory. So there's a bunch of names called out. Those names were the ones that didn't progress. the 19 of us did. So yeah, gutting for those guys that had gotten through. There was some officers that didn't get through as well, so they did all the selection and they did the officer testing, and they unfortunately weren't part of the 19 that got chosen to stay on for the cycle. But yeah, the numbers, the percentages aren't very high. You'll get some bigger groups that go through, you'll get some smaller groups that go through, but anywhere between 80 to 90+% fail. And so you've got a sort of 5 to 20% maximum sort of pass rate of that, probably more sort of 5 to 10%. But yeah.
Nice. At what point do you figure out if you're going SAS or SBS?
Beforehand.
So you know what you're trying out for beforehand.
Yeah.
They don't
put you into a box and say you would actually be better in the SBS, and that's you put in for service in the SS. That may have changed now. I'm not sure. I'm out of the loop somewhat. But,
so what happens if they have a class where everybody wants to go SAS?
That's it.
And nobody wants to go SBS.
Sometimes there's been courses where just one person has passed.
No
or
shit.
Two people, I think, as well. So it's like, yeah.
Interesting. Well, how do they fill billets?
That could be a potential problem. I'm out of the loop now. So the big problem is we have a lot of people. I think people are leaving now because of the war on terror is finished. So there tends to be people leaving, and sometimes the more people are leaving than coming in. It's really interesting just to see. We're going to go off on a tangent here, so get ready. But it's really interesting to me to watch special operations, the tip of the spear globally, just diminish.
Hey, everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click.
Okay, so this was a short little 8-minute segment around the difference between SBS and SAS. You can see on the title there. But I thought I'd chunk these up. It's just a bit easier than sitting down trying to find the right timing on that 2.5-hour interview. I've done a couple of reactions already to the early stages and his upbringing, background, that sort of stuff. And then we're getting into some of the meat, and then we'll get to the Nairobi one. So hopefully this is just trying to chunk it up a little bit differently rather than just sitting from start to finish, because there's probably some bits in there that I personally probably wasn't really that super keen on, and getting some of the feedback from people that have been thankfully watching and communicating. They said they've made some good suggestions. I probably don't need to sit through the whole of it, and there's probably aspects, especially when Shawn Ryan does a great job of chunking it up into segments on there, so I can probably skip to some of the key parts in there, which I'll look to do. I'll trial that out anyway. Let me know if you prefer that, or if you prefer that I just watch it from start to finish and go through and give the reactions and break them up that way. Happy to trial out both, but playing around with this, another great insight into what are the differences between the SBS guys and the SAS, and what that process looks like, what it sounds like. Love Craig's humility. He's speaking about, he's a little bit out of the loop now, but I think that's probably also part of what he spoke about in the first segment of the interview, that there'd be things that that he probably could talk about, but he chooses not to, and that's just where he's at the stage, and that's cool. So hopefully you got something from that, or hopefully you enjoyed the reaction. Maybe you've filled with a whole bunch of other questions and stuff as well. Feel free to whack them in, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But other than that, thanks for sticking around. Keep smashing and hammering whatever it is you're doing each day, whatever challenges and struggles you may be going through. Just keep turning up, keep chipping away, stay in the fight, and until the next video.